Hey everyone, I'm Bill Stathopoulos, CEO of SalesCaptain, an AI-led go-to-market agency. We build go-to-market motions for brands like Nestle, Versato, Y Combination startups, and AI businesses. I'm sitting here today with Charles Tenot, CEO of Lemlist, a legendary outbound and sales enablement platform. Really can't say enough about that. Fully bootstrapped from 0 to 30 million ARR plus, which is quite an incredible achievement. We're going to be peeking a little bit behind the curtain. Charles himself helped the company overcome a plateau and hit 30 million ARR. So he has a lot of learnings, a lot of things that we're going to be discussing on the future of go to market, AI, how it plays into that. Super excited to have you with us, man.
Thanks so much for having me, Bill. It's a pleasure to be here and really excited by this session.
Yeah, likewise. Let's start with an easy one. You've someone looks at your LinkedIn profile. You've been a CEO, you've been a COO, you've been CFO. What are some of the tools, the tricks, and the strategies you've taken from each of these roles to kind of shape how you are now the CEO of Lemlist?
Yeah, that's a really good question actually. I have a atypical profile, I'd say, because I started working in finance, and so very often people ask me how I ended up like being a CEO after being a finance person. And I think the main learning is that I always hated labels, that people put on you, and so I wanted always to put to make people wrong, And when I was a finance person, all the time people were saying, but you're a finance guy, so you will think this way. And I was like, no, I don't think this way. And so I wanted to break this finance, label. And I think it really drove like interest for me to, generally speaking, have more impact on the companies. So yeah, one thing was really like, so first of all, is important that people understand that you can become anything you want. You don't need to
I
accept
love that.
label. And
Yeah.
and it's really something that I love to share because I was frustrated by being labeled the finance guy all the time, and I wanted to break this label. And actually, I ended up breaking it because not anyone is actually calling me a finance guy today. So you can escape any type of label and decide which label you want,
Yeah.
but people will continue to label you. That's life. And then the reason why I moved from finance to other function was that I always tried in the company to have as much impact as possible. And I'm not saying that finance doesn't have an impact. I'm of course they have a lot of impact, and it's an amazing job. It's just that finance is about a lot about being like looking at the battle and
Hmm.
trying to plan and help the company
Yeah.
survive. And this is really important, but it's not my mindset. My mindset is more like I want to be in the field. I want to be closer to the action, and so I think naturally it made sense to me to find ways to be closer to what's happening in the business in the day to day. And things that, to answer more directly to your question, things that I took in these different roles, and generally speaking, in every experience I had, my advice is always to um, take things that are going to be new assets to you. So it can be true for roles. So for instance, when I was in finance, I was doing lots of analysis, and it helped me to be very analytical and data oriented. And I don't think it was a natural trait for me. It
Hmm.
was more
Yeah.
something that I developed because I was not the most rigorous person, naturally. But I worked with very rigorous person, and I worked on spreadsheet for like day longs, and I ended up like being quite good with number, being quite analytical. And I think it's something that really helps your whole life, because whenever a system becomes more complex, being able to analyze the metrics and understand what's
For
behind
sure.
is really helpful. And so
Yeah.
now I know that whenever I see a situation, I'm able to deep dive in the metrics and the numbers and understand what's going on, and not being fooled too, because you can no, because you can always like you can take any number and make it say whatever you
Yeah.
want.
For
And
sure.
when you are good with numbers, it's
Yeah.
it's it's easier to like try to find the trick, and so I think that that's what helped me. And after I worked more in operations,
Hmm.
head of RevOps, and I managed the CRM and the systems for a company. And I think it really helped me to think of architectures, because, for instance, at Botify, I built everything around like what we called quote to cash, which is like basically like how do we price a product, how we present quotes to customer, what type of discounts do we agree to do, what type of
Yeah.
approvals are there, and then how does that flows into signed quotes, and then after invoices for the customer, and then after revenue recognition and MRR or AR recognition when you talk about SaaS. And all of this I built as a system that was fully connected. And so I think when you can think of system, it's a strong power because very often people just they would try to solve a problem with just a simple thing, and they will just put, I don't know, like try to just patch something, you know. And when you just patch things, you're forgetting the whole system, and then you just create more depth, technical depth, but like I would say ops depth or whatever you say, internal system depth. And many companies grow like that. Like they have a lot of very different systems. Let's say they have workflows, they have many different workflows, and then it scales and they add a new one. So they will just add a new channel or a new thing into that. And then after they have like something that's huge, you know, and that's a mess. And because the lack of like system thinking and architecture, and when you want to do a good architecture, you always have to think of the long term and how a scalable system works.
For sure.
And instead of doing just one thing that solves a problem, you're more think of like what the actual system like in the long term would look like, and how can I, instead of working like one on something that's going to be destroyed, then maybe I can work two times more on something that is just a step that is MVP still. It's not working like 100, you know, in terms of quantity to reach the perfect system. But instead of one, it's maybe two. So you have to do the extra mile right now. But you're not building technical depth. You're more building something that you know you will be able to leverage. So I think architecture is really important in any scale, and to avoid this effect where maybe you know that, but where you have systems that don't scale so well, and then takes a lot of time to fix.
It's inefficiency, right? It's like, you know, it either the process or the system or the code is not working at scale. Do you often find yourself being like now being the CEO, do you find yourself being like, hey guys, I've been a CFO, like I know this isn't supposed to be going that way, or I've been a COO, so it's like, you know, this shouldn't be this or that way, or does the team kind of intuitively navigate towards that? Do you still tend to provide like more input in those areas, or?
Yeah, it's funny. It's a great question. Actually, I think I may have done, but now not so much, because, like, for instance, we have a great like head of finance, and our chief of staff is running finance, so they are both working on financial stuff. And to be honest, they do an amazing work, and they do, I think, better than I would do, or at least as good. And so every time I look, so of course, when sometimes they want to ask me stuff, and I'm always here, and I understand the language quite well. But to be honest, like I realized that, and it's something that I realized generally speaking for CEO, it's really difficult to be at the level of every topic that's going on in the company. Yeah, I think it's almost impossible, and this is what leads to micromanagement. When the CEO wants to know everything that's going on, you know, for instance, in finance, because I was a finance guy, when I talk to them, I realize that every time I say, yeah, but you should do this, you should do that, they say, yes, we thought about it, but instead the problem we face is this one. And I realize that they are not stupid, you know, they know what they're doing. And you cannot really help if you don't dedicate a lot of time in a topic. And this is, I think, one of the most difficult thing in CEO, is that you want to challenge different people to help them give 100% of their potential. And I think but on the meantime, you are far away from realizing how complex is their reality, because you see maybe 10% or 5% of what they live. And this is a problem that I really face, because like I love all the product we build at Lemlist, and I am a user actually. Whenever I hire, whenever I want to do some campaigns, I use it. And every single time I see like many things that frustrates me, you know, and I'm like, there is this one, there is this one, and this bug, and this is not clear. And why did you do it this way? And I would love, you know, to be like 100% of my time on the product, but it's clearly impossible, because like I have many other things, and so I have to accept that I can't be. And actually, they are whenever they explain me the rationale of things, 9 out of 10 time I agree with them, and I would have chose the same. And doesn't mean that sometimes I'm not right and I don't have a good idea, but I realize that you cannot be like good in every field, and I don't think that's the point. I think the point is like, it's either you're a CEO with an edge somewhere and you hire other people to cover other part of the business. Let's say that I heard that some CEO consider themselves as CPO, which is something that I would love to do, but I don't think I just have enough time or organization to do that. And I think in that case, maybe that makes sense to be like, maybe Steve Jobs, you know, was a CPO in a way. And so he's 100% focused on the product, and he's like delegating all the other aspects. And maybe that's a good way to do it. Or I think you can be a CEO generalist that is able to challenge everyone, but never think you know better than them, you know? Like, just like, okay, have you thought of this? And the way I usually see I create value is really when I help them take a step back and say, okay, so can you tell me like this quarter, what are the main achievements you want? Why? So for instance, you're working on this project. Why are you working on this project? Like, what are the KPI you expect to increase? Like I don't know if you're improving the website. Can you tell me what's the current level of traffic and the conversion rate? And why do you think we could increase the conversion rate of this website? How much you want to increase it? And so it's just asking questions, and taking a step back is really where I see value when you're a generalist CEO. And usually what people appreciate, I guess.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And how do you identify? Because I guess that would be an issue. Like with every department, how do you set the KPIs along with the team so that then you're able to track them? And how do you identify what signals they should be filtering? Because as you said, you don't have time to go through everything, the decision making that goes on behind it. So it's like, how are you able to identify? I need you to tell me about these things. Don't tell me about these things unless they become like red or urgent or like an emergency that you can't deal with yourself. How do you manage to kind of have a level of abstraction that's good enough so you're not in the day to day, but you're also allowed to provide input where needed?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think like first of all on the KPI part, I try not to be too KPI driven. For me, I don't know if you know this curve, like this meme where you have like like a bell curve like that, and you have like beginner, like advanced, and then master. And for me, it's like I always think of that with data. For me, there is like no data is like beginner level, tracking everything is like intermediate level, and no data is like the expert level. It's like a bit like when you don't have any data. And I'm joking with that, but I think like data and coming from data is really something that means a bit nothing. And data it's not useless, but it has many flaws. And so in terms of what we track, of course we track KPI, but I can give you hundreds of examples. For instance, traffic is a totally vanity metric, because like a traffic with bots, with LLM bots, then it changes all the time. And to be honest, I have been in different PLG companies. I've never seen a link, even in like sometimes when you have like 300,000 visits per month, 500,000 visits per month, so big websites, rather big.
Yeah.
I've never seen a link between like visit and number of sign up or revenue. Never. Like sometimes it's like you don't know what happens. Like there are more visits and less sign up, and you're like, okay, I don't know what happened. So there are many metrics that are flawed by design. It's the same sign up. You can have a huge increase of sign up, but if it's not the right sign up, because I don't know, like for instance, we allow personal email to sign up, then it's not good. So you will tell me, yeah, but you have to track professional email. But then I will tell you, yes, but Indian sign up are converting less. Okay, so let's track not Indian. And then you always find, a new condition. And then you end up with like 10% of the pool of what you want to track. And why not tracking like very precise KPI? But then you forget to have the big picture and doing, let's say, agnostic marketing and let's say like systemic marketing. And so I don't think like target and same if you do content, how do you measure that the content is performing well? How do you measure the brand? Like people ask us very often, like, what is our main channel? Like our main channel is brands. It's people typing Lemlist either on direct or either on Google. But how do you measure a brand? And you can use very expensive tool that will measure your brand authority, but that's a bit BS, to be honest. So for me, like the metric is like, of course it's good. It gives an idea. It helps the team to find something to impact. And of course, when you're in sales, you can always track new bookings. So there are some KPIs that are still like good to track. But I don't think we want too much data. We just want some data to make sure that we go in the right direction. For instance, that can be a project. Like let's say that we want to increase the number of G2 reviews. So let's say that the target is to be at 4.8 of G2 review grade and 1,000 reviews, something like that. So that's something measurable, but it's not. You don't know how it's going to impact the overall acquisition of the company in terms of new business. So that's the first point. And then when it comes to your second part of the question, like how do you have the right level of abstraction? To be honest, I think it's a lot of like there are many different parts in this answer. I think it's first of all, it's a lot by having trust with the manager, because I naturally explain that because very often in like CEO and manager relationship, which I have seen a lot in previous company from me because I was not CEO before, or with my peers working with the CEO and explaining the relationship, what I have seen is that trust is very often missing. And when trust is missing, it's not a relationship that's designed to help the business. It's a relationship that's designed to help the relationship. And so the CEO tries to create a channel of communication and understand what's going on. And the manager that's reporting to the CEO is trying to, it can be different things, but achieve different goals. That can be make the CEO safe, which will be one of the main goals. And very often you want to make the CEO safe, because if the CEO feels safe, he's chill, he's not on your back, and you have a better day.
Oh my God, tell me
this
about
is true.
it.
This is just human. And so I'm always trying to say to the team, don't try to make me safe. I don't need that. I don't need to feel safe. I don't need to feel good. Tell me what's not working, you know, and tell me how I can help you. Of course, it doesn't always work. I know sometimes they know that they don't want me to look at something, and I know that because I feel like they are not, you know, and sometimes it's like, yeah, everything is green, it's awesome, like you know, we have some flags in some reporting, and so you check the reporting and you really see like sometimes everything is like green. Whoa, everything is going well in the team. Yeah. Let's talk about the problems now. So I think you need to create trust, so they share problems with you, honestly, and same. I think when there are problems, it's really important that you don't point at them, but rather you position as a partner to help them solve problem. And sometimes it's a tricky part, and I don't always manage to do that. But sometimes when you are pissed off and as a CEO, or when things don't go as planned, it's easy to blame, you know, to say it's because of this, of that you did. And in this case, I think you destroy relationship, because instead of thinking like we are Joe, let's try to find ways to work together. You position yourself as like someone who is judging and within the other team. And if you are in the other team, then what you create is that the person tries to tell you only the information that will make them look good, you know. And so all of this is like insanely important, because when you have trust, they share actual problems they have, and then you can start to work on actual problems with them. So I think this is one of the main things that you need to achieve, like on the base of the pyramid, to really be able to work with pairs, with your team. And then after, there is a lot of gut feeling too. That for me, like being a generalist is really helpful, because I think like I have a good idea of like what is marketing, you know, what's a good marketing, what's a good content, what's growth, what should be seeding into growth, what should be seeding into brand, why, what is a good paid acquisition channel, like a campaign, what is SEO about, you know. And so I think being a generalist means like being curious about everything, and at the same time understanding like what's your development language, what's your product process, how does your product team makes decision, what's your stack in terms of operations, which CRM do you use, what's the architecture of your CRM, how do you quote, you know, to be able to understand like most of the parts going on in the business. So you have at least an idea. You will never know as the operator, far from that, and this is what I mentioned earlier. But if you're like interested in everything, you start to have some gut feelings about things that, you know, are a problem or needs to be changed. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, because it gives you like a broad idea of things. Yeah, I think I can resonate with that, because similarly, I like the game of business. So it's interesting every single day, especially as the business grow. I'm sure, and we'll talk about it. You've been through the same. It's like a different business at 15 million, at 20, 30, and different when you're growing past that.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like if tomorrow we are at 100 million and maybe we are, sorry, we are much bigger. I'm sure that it will be a bit different too, and that I'm not the CEO of a 10,000 people company, and I'm sure they have a different job. And it's not the same. So I'm talking for what I know, which is like 150 people.
But still, it takes being excited about like and that's what I found out. It's like most people will grow until a place or a pace that feels comfortable, and then they'll sit there. Nothing wrong with that. But like if you want to be part of a company that grows, you still, as a CEO, you still have to continue relearning the game, relearning what is SEO or what is marketing and brand for a $10 million company, which is different from a $1 million company. What is management with 10 people versus 100 people versus 150 people?
Yeah, of course you have this, and you have the fact that everything changed so fast. Yeah, like market, like with AI, with change. For instance, SEO is like changing completely, and you guys know it. But everything is changing. Like yesterday, you mentioned Gen Z marketing. Gen Z marketing is not like the traditional marketing. It's a new way to do it. And you know, if you do, I don't know, social ads, Like, to be honest, like social ads is a lot about creativity, finding like fun stuff to do, and a campaign, even with the right targeting, you can do 10x or even like sometimes 100x on return on ad spend, just by having better creatives. Which is pretty new, to be honest. Like at least 5 years ago, that was not maybe the case.
100%. Yeah, especially if you look at ecom, you have user-generated content. It's like gone completely reverse.
Yeah,
in terms of what the
100%.
brand uses. You mentioned brand before, and talking about like the biggest kind of user acquisition growth channels for Lemlist. Do you attribute specific channels to that, to the growth of the brand, or what are some of the activities that you try and do to influence the perception of the brand, the growth of the brand, and by kind of secondary metric, the signups that come with it?
Yeah, so we do have a simple tracking. So basically, we track like everyone, like based on first touch and last touch, like the different UTM source. So that can be like and brand is a big part. So we have like, of course, we have a branded direct and branding SEO, and then we have SEO non-branded, which is things what come from the blog, but it's much smaller. And then we have partnerships, that's another channel. We have paid, that's another channel. We have maybe five or six different UTM sources. And to be honest, we don't go so much further than this, because we already have a rather strong model, because I can explain, but basically we have a rudder stack, and we track all the visitors of the website, and we have built some kind of like fingerprinting in-house, which is basically like being able to re-identify like people who come back on the website thanks to their browser. And and so when we did that, so we went to very low level of data that we can collect. And when we compute things, we realize that no matter how we set up things, if it's like first touch, last touch, it's a bit pointless. It doesn't change the way we do marketing. That you can do first touch, you can do last touch. At the end, the question is like, what does that change in the way you operate? And sometimes you get lost into all these formula, and how you want to track things. You realize that first of all, you have no idea of the actual journey, because the journey is like only known by Google, because it's multi-device, can be from iPad, iPhone, like a browser. So nobody really knows like the journey of the people. And so you will never know. So you will invest a lot of money to try to know. And then ultimately you don't know, and you don't do anything with the data. So we prefer to say, okay, let's talk to customers. Let's ask them how they knew us, what was their journey, how they decided. And of course, it's only a few data points, but when you speak to dozens of customers, at the end, you start to find patterns, and you know that you're strong on this and that. And so this is generally speaking how we do to like appreciate our reputation online. So it's just few data points. And then the way we operate with to improve branding, generally speaking, it's like we try to be, so what worked, and it was like before I arrived, it was built by Guillaume. I think Guillaume was really good to do, to pay it forward. I think the idea of Guillaume in business, and I think it's the DNA of the brand now, because he created it. It's like we pay it forward. So basically, in the world before, like I think before Lemlist, people were like getting content, and then you give your email and you have shitty content. So it's like fuck you after, like and Guillaume was more, okay, let's not do fuck you after, let's do pay it forward, pay it first, so give the content, it's good, people trust us, and it will always come back. It will always come back to us in a good way.
Really good content,
and we trust. And he did the multi-channel outreach masterclass, which has downloaded maybe 100,000 times, something like that. It's like huge, and he spent like weeks, maybe months to build that, to improve it, and he asked nothing in return. He just gave it. And I think we try to keep that in mind, because it's the DNA of the brand. And so if the brand is famous and appreciated for that, what we need to do is to make sure that we remain in that idea. And there's an example I give very often, but if you type marketing budget, I don't know if it's still the case, but you will find like HubSpot is the first one to rank on this keyword, and they ask you for your email, and then they give you a Google sheet that's trash, that's done by an intern, that's maybe done in 10 minutes, by even ChatGPT would do better, and so I think this is a bit scam, this is not the way people like you build trust, and everything around the brand has always been to build trust with the audience. And so we always try to do the same. So for instance, recently we made two decisions that illustrate that. The first decision is that we created an SEO team, and the team was doing really well. Like actually we we had a good SEO team. Like we had a SEO lead who was like strong in the field. We hired SEO content writers everywhere in the world, and we started to have a SEO content factory. And we released content. The problem we had is that having a good content creator for sales tech is like very, very, very difficult.
Yeah.
So it's impossible to have 6 or 7 in like 3 months. So we had good content writers, but they were not industry experts.
Yeah.
And so what happens is that the content they produce is SEO optimized, and it's actually good to read, but it doesn't really add so much value in terms of sales because they don't know sales, and it would have taken like years to train them. And so what happened is that we realized that we started to have SEO traffic, and it was working in terms of business, but we had a very high bounce rate. the signups coming from there were not very high quality.
Yeah.
And so we started to think like, okay, we are maybe losing a bit sight of the brand, and we are creating content that optimizes for Google, but doesn't optimize for being read. And the question we asked ourselves was like, would I read that? Would I read this content, this SEO article? No, I would never read it because it's not good. And so we decided to stop SEO efforts, and that was a tough decision because there was a team there, and and we like them, and so it's not easy to make this type of decision, but it was not a fit with the brand. And this is kind of illustration of like making decisions that are aligned with who you are. And the other example I have is like recently we did a sales playbook, and it's our CMO herself who did the playbook. She worked with like 11 labs, Spendesk, and like Paddle now we are working with. And she interviewed like sales and BDR for like hours. And we did a playbook that explained how they work in detail. And it's like a playbook that's 5-6 page fix. And we didn't gate it. We initially we wanted to gate it, and then we had the second thought and we said, okay, let's not gate it. Let's just give it for free. And no email required, nothing. You can just get in and download it. And we had like hundreds of feedbacks by email, like, wow, this is awesome. This is the best content I've ever seen of sales, etc. And so this is the way the brand was built. And I think it works. And at least for us, the idea is to continue operate this way because it worked for us, and we still believe it will continue to work. Maybe one day it will not work, but for now it still seems to be working because I think it's tied to profound human traits, which are like just building trust and making sure that they can trust us as a brand, that we are not going to screw them, that when we do something, we do it good. And yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah, I think the more we see AI develop, at least in its current form, the content that it produces, it can't replace authenticity. It can't replace what you said, doing the interviews with the actual experts and creating content that really touches on what the people are actually feeling, actually experiencing, what the actual problem is, and then talking to them about solutions. I think it's like it's an interesting trap that companies might fall into, because it's the same as not having product market fit. Like, that's how I'm hearing it. It's like you're talking to the audience, but you don't necessarily know what the problem is, or you're making things up, or you're talking about like really surface things that don't make sense.
Yeah, but it's a choice, and I think you can run very successful business by being more ROI driven and being like, okay, I just want to rank very well on this, on that, and I think you can build a successful business, just a different business. I think what's important is to be aligned with your brand and be careful, because brand is an asset, and like any asset, you can increase it or you can destroy it.
Yeah, for sure.
And so if you destroy what's your main asset, then it's difficult,
100%. I still remember when G's profile got banned from LinkedIn and all the kind of background. Given that Lemlist is or has been in its kind of beginning and early stages, like a founder-led in terms of like the marketing itself brand, do you ever envision yourself being on camera like a little bit more like the face of the business in a way that's like more content heavy, or that kind of goes back to that old route? Have you guys shifted kind of the way you approach marketing? I know that there were several people.
You mean for myself?
Yeah.
Yeah, to be honest, like I think you cannot be. You need to be yourself. I think Guillaume is a genius there, and people love him, and he's natural on camera, and he loves doing that, and that's fine. And I mean, I'm not Guillaume, and I'm not going to be as good as him, and that's fine. That's not the plan. My role is to make sure that we create a good business in my way, and in using like the legacy, I would say, like or at least what Guillaume created, which helps us a lot, the brand, and make sure that we are aligned with that. Then I'm not, I'm okay to be on camera. I love meeting people. And
You're not doing bad.
no, I don't think I'm doing terrible, but let's say that I'm doing okay. And that's fine, because my personality is to be more an all-rounder. And so I'm able to do that, but I'm able to do other things. And yeah, I think anyway, you cannot change who you are, like just because it worked. I think Guillaume was like that, and it worked. But even though I wanted to be like Guillaume, I would never be able to. And so I think people who try to imitate Guillaume and create the business as he did are never successful, because you cannot clone that. It's like I don't know, you're running the 100 meters like Usain Bolt. There is some genetics, in that. And even if you want to look like Usain Bolt, you will never be the same. That's it.
Yeah. Or you look at Apple before and after Steve Jobs. It's like Tim
100%.
Cook. He really I think he tried to copy Steve Jobs a little bit, at least in terms of like how he presents. But a lot of the other aspects of it, like, Tim is an operator. He built all the back end and made Apple profitable to the moon and back. It's
exactly. So I hope I can be like Tim Cook. But I think it's exactly that. I think it's always good to learn from others, to learn from people, and of course I'm trying to learn from Guillaume to understand. Like, sometimes I watch his video and I'm like, okay, what makes him so good at that? So I can get some stuff. But I will never get close to being him, and that's fine. I mean, like, I can try to get better, because it's good to get better in any field. But that's
as long as you're passionate and having fun, I'd say.
Yeah.
And you joined a company that doesn't, we talk about Lemlist, but in reality, there's Lemlist, TweetHunter, Taplio, Clap, the newest acquisition. How do you manage and how do you run things across like this portfolio of companies, obviously in the same space with a really similar user set, which is kind of the strategy behind it. But like, how do you manage to innovate when there's so much kind of individual things going on, from spam filters to competition in all these different areas, staying ahead of it, doing marketing for like these different kind of products and use cases that people have, and still keep the team kind of focused, still going after the same kind of vision?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we always try to innovate as much as possible, and I think we have proven that last year, because we really released like lots of new things, like including like VoIP, WhatsApp message. Now we're releasing signals on Lemlist. So I think we innovate quite fast. The way we've been approaching that is that Taplio and TweetHunter are managed as a separate business. So it's called a business line that is managed by a team of 10 people that is operating independently. So there is a general manager, Patrice, there is a product manager, there is a tech team, a tech lead, and a few growth marketer like Virgil and Annika. And basically, so they operate like a startup. We want to leave them free. And we help them when we can. Actually, I'm a Taplio user. I write on LinkedIn, and so I can give lots of feedbacks. Nice. And so actually today I'm talking to webinar for Taplio, but they operate independently, and we don't give them any constraints. Yeah. And so they're specialized in building Taplio and TweetHunter. And since the team was built maybe 6 to 9 months ago, we've seen like a lot of improvement in the product and overall the growth. So it shows that giving ownership really works. And the problem you can have when you have many different products is there is a lack of ownership, because like nobody knows what they are responsible for. Yeah. And for Lemwarm and Lemcal, we consider them as part of Lemlist. So Lemwarm is a product that you can build on, you can buy on your own. So you can use Lemwarm without using Lemlist, and we still have like a couple of thousand customers doing that. But most of the customers using Lemwarm are using it as a feature of Lemlist.
Yeah, makes sense.
And same for Lemcal. And so the way we operate Lemlist now is to work with squads. So we have different product managers with designers and developers, and they work on areas. So we have different areas. We have one squad around AI productivity, which is really like the different AI products we have in Lemlist. There is one part around deliverability. So we have one product manager who specializes in deliverability, and he's like amazing. When you talk to him, you don't understand anything. He's like really strong. And actually, when we put him in front of customers, they are really impressed, because they have like I think he's maybe in the top 10 or 20 people in the world in like deliverability knowledge. Yeah. And he's owner of the deliverability part for Lemlist. And so he owns the roadmap, and he decides like what are the biggest priority for Lemwarm. And so this is the way we operate. So we have someone else for multi-channel engagement who is managing like the different channels, WhatsApp, LinkedIn, SMS now soon. And so we give ownerships to different squads and they become specialists of this. And this makes sure that they are like really strong in that field. Or the last squad is like about sales productivity. So we have someone who is like in charge of like looking at how sales work and finding the best workflows so they can use Lemlist and really gain efficiency. So yeah, everyone has kind of a very clear ownership, and we try to distribute decision making so they own their own roadmap. That doesn't mean that we don't challenge it, but we try to give them as much ownership as possible so they feel like they are really building their thing, you know.
And it really seems to be working. I mean, you joined, and I think the company at that point was at the $15 million dollar mark. It had plateaued for a little bit. You're now 30 million past, hopefully more soon. What were some of the decisions, the go-to-market strategy, the structure within the business that you were able to kind of build or update to hit that mark to kind of overcome the plateau? Because we give obviously Guillaume a lot of credit for starting the business, scaling it took quite a good amount, but same as Tim Cook, like has had his era and has had an impact at Apple. You also seem to have quite a big impact in the business overall.
Yeah, so that's always very difficult to say. At least I was lucky to see growth after I joined, but you never know, really what exactly driving growth. And we have thought that a lot with the team and with Guillaume of like, how do we explain that we've been able to re-accelerate growth? Because like 2023, we had like zero growth on Lemlist actually, or very, very few. 2024, we had maybe 30%, 25 to 30%. And this year, maybe we're going to hit 60% growth. So it's a very strong momentum. And the main reason we're seeing, to be honest, is like really product innovation. Mm-hmm. Before I joined, there was a very long period where they've been like working on technical debt and trying to, because they were in the early days like shipping very fast. And then what happened is that you don't really improve your tech stack and work on maintenance. And so in 2022, 2023, they worked for maybe more than a year, on fixing technical debts. And that's something I hear a lot from companies, like from software companies, that they have been killed by, trying to fix technical debts or trying to migrate, from monoliths to microservice, like these big technical projects that create zero value for the customer. Sometimes when you put too much resource on them and you forget to innovate, you die, So I think that's one of the reasons why, and when I joined, I really like, we changed a lot of things. Like we had to let people go. We really communicate on how important it was to innovate, and we pushed to create more features. And I think we found an innovation cycle again. And that led to, for instance, we launched the lead database at that time. We didn't have one. We launched the campaigns conditions. We launched the multiple sender in one campaign, the sender rotation. So we better listened to the market and we shipped things that they were asking for a while. And
website visitor tracking amongst my favorites.
Yes, website visitor tracking, exactly, that we know are packaging even better. And so we launched many different things. And actually what happened is that we were seen as an innovator again. So that's one of the reasons. And I think generally speaking, there are many other things, but we improved execution overall. Like we hired a bit more. I think a business is like, your role is to constantly improve talent density. And so when you're young, when you're early, and you cannot attract like the best top talents in the world unless you're backed by Sequoia and but it's impossible because and you can find people who are very smart, you have to detect potential, but you cannot hire the people who are already very successful because they are out of your league, in terms of like what you can offer. But you can detect people who are potential to become, and that's already good. But you will fail. You will not 100% have like potential world-class talent. You will maybe have 20-30% of the one who are here. It's already good. And I think it's what happened. And then after, the more you're successful, your role is always to attract like better talents, and make sure that the talent density overall continues to increase. Yeah. And you have to be very careful of one thing, is that there is a very famous bias in psychology. It's like when you think that someone is good because they were in the company that was good, and that happens very often. So this is the main, I think, reason why scale-ups fail, is because they want to increase their talent density. They are growing, they are raising more money, so they're attracting more talents. and they get a bit flued or screwed by like people who were, I don't know, like someone who was at Google, but if you were at Google in the last 3 years, you had absolutely nothing to do in Google's success, you know. So it's what I'm seeing happening often. It's when you attribute traits to someone that are tied to where they were at a given time, but and actually they were not really impacting the business. And so what happens is that you can have people who are not so good but seem good. So that's one of the traps that you can have. And I think we have been lucky to find like leaders who are actually good and who are doers at heart, and still, besides some of them have like more than 10 years experience, they are still like in the day-to-day putting their hands in the dirt and making things happen. And I think it's part of the culture.
No, 100%. And you have to have that, otherwise it doesn't really grow. It's an interesting point because it's also something that we're optimizing for heavily. One thing I've seen is the more hires, and obviously SalesCaptain is much earlier, we're not in the 10 or 30 million ARR yet. But one of the things that we've seen is with every single hire, talent density seems to keep increasing because we nail the job description, the things to avoid, the things to look for a lot more. So whenever we have like a new hire or a new category that we're hiring for, I know that maybe the first or the second hires are not going to be the best ones. We will do our vetting, but because we don't have the experience of like, okay, what are the KPIs we have to hit? How does it influence the rest of the organization? I'm typically skeptical. You know, I'm happy that people are proving me wrong more often times than not. But it's like I've seen that, especially with critical roles. It's like, you know, the new hire, you have all the things that have gone wrong before that you can vet for and be like, okay, you know, how do you approach this situation, or how do you deal with client churning, or, you know, things like that.
I think the dynamic that you can explain that will make sense for everyone is like, the dynamic is always pretty much the same, or at least is often pretty much the same. So you have an early stage company, they start to hire their first rep. So they will hire a first AE. I take reps because it's easy to measure, because it's like how much you close, you know. But it can be the same for any role that you replicate. So they have their first rep. The first rep is like a founding sales, usually someone very scrappy. And this person will usually do well, or at least they don't have a choice, because if they don't sell, they're fired. So because it's early days, so they will most of the time be quite successful. Then what happens is that they start to hire a second rep, a third rep, and most of the time it's disappointing because they don't find someone who is like as scrappy as the first one, and the founding sales was like really close to the founders, and they were really involved, etc. So usually they start to feel like, oh, it's quite tough to scale sales, and one day they will hire a sales who do much better than everyone. And instead of like, signing, maybe the founding sales was signing, 2,000 MRR per month, the new sales is signing 4, you know? And it's like, wow, this is possible to sign 4. And this is a new standard for everyone. And then you try to replicate that, and people see that it's actually possible to do 4, and some other people start to do 4, even people you didn't expect. And this is always happening like that in any sales team. Like, you set a new standard and people like find the impossible possible, and starts to happen. And then it's replicate that, and there is a new sales who arrive and does even more, because I don't know, they have found something, a new vertical, a new industry, a new way to sell the product, and they will maybe do 6, you know. And now everyone say that you can do 6. Of course, everything is changing in the company. The product is more mature. You have more marketing, etc., etc. And after, what happens is the opposite. Is the sales who were doing 6 is pissed off because they feel like complaint, because everyone was earning so much money that the CRO decides to change the comp plan and reduce it for everyone. And so the guy who are doing 6 is leaving. And so now nobody sees that you can do 6 anymore. And it's like, oh, so 6 is really impossible. It was before, but now we have more competition. The market is more difficult. So now what's possible is 4. And then the guy who are doing 4 is leaving too, because the comp plan changed again, you know. and then everybody's doing 2 again, fun. You know. And it's pretty much it's a bit like that in many scale-ups. That's really interesting. But it's exactly what you mentioned about like tendencies. Like people who arrive sometimes will redefine. Of course, you know better how to hire, who to hire, and you will be lucky in a way and find someone who redefine a bit the job. And the only thing you have to do is to make sure that this person stays and is seen as a top performer, is rewarded as so, because this person knows they are a top performer, you know. They know it for sure, you know. But on the meantime, you don't want this person to be spoiled, you know. And the problem is that sometimes top performer becomes diva, you know. And so you have to find a way to manage expectation, but reward and show appreciation, and that's difficult.
I get you. I've been there, and it's. I think you mentioned something that's quite known in sports as well. I think it was Usain Bolt who like broke a record
Yeah,
in terms of the
like the mile
fastest.
record, for instance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which was something that people thought that was
Mm.
not possible before. And talking about that, it's like AI has had like a major role across marketing. Obviously, Lemlist has built into quite a few features in that. How do you see it influencing go to market going into the new year? How do you see reps kind of adopting or not adopting AI, and how that kind of lands? We're seeing mass layoffs. There's a lot of like uncertainty. What's your playbook, or what's your vision that kind of allows you to translate this is what we're doing next year because of all
Yeah.
the changes that are happening?
Personally, I don't see any productivity gains from AI in any company. Like even in leading AI companies, I don't see any productivity gains through AI. And because when I talk to growth and RevOps and GTM engineer, they show all the use case that they do, and they are very excited about that. And when I talk to sales, they tell me that they don't use AI. And so it's just it's a gap. Like it's clear. Like you go to any company, like of course it's not true 100%, and I'm exaggerating, but if you talk to most of the sales and you ask, like, you go to RevOps and you say, okay, what did you implement in AI? They will say, oh, we did this workflow, we did that. They're very happy. And then you talk to sales and say, can you tell me in the last year how much you improved your productivity thanks to AI? It's like, oh, almost nothing, maybe 5%, 10%. So I don't think there are productivity gains today in sales team. So I think all the charts showing, like, for instance, the unemployment in the US versus like the value of the companies, I think for me it's just that we live in the bubble. It's in my theory. It's just that actually the business is not going so well. It's not that AI replaced jobs, because I don't see it. So maybe it's true in enterprise business, but for me it's not, because enterprise are always like longer to adopt anything. And I remember when I worked at Allianz, and still people that work at Allianz today, they're still working in the same system that they were working 20 years ago. And I don't think AI is really changing the job. And so it will change, it will have productivity gains. But for me, there are not any productivity gains right now. Not at least not huge. And the main reason is simple. It's because we are from an era of like, let's say Cambrian boom, of like AI. So everyone is doing new AI use case, etc. So it's like there are many, it's like in the evolution of like life. It's a Cambrian boom. Like it's like life is happening everywhere. It's like AI is happening everywhere, and then there is a shrink. And the shrink is like the natural selection of AI of what will remain or not, and it's not happened already. And so what happens is that there is an overload of AI use case, and people are lost. And
for sure.
And the other reason that I'm seeing is that the last mile of AI is not done. So when you look at AI, sometimes you have a GPT. So if you look at what people actually use, of course there are people with N10 workflow, complex, etc. But very often it's not fully embedded in the process of people. It's not something that's really where you work, And I think this is the last mile of the AI product that's not really done, because the natural selection of AI product has not been fully done. And an example is like Agicap. Agicap, they built a Chrome extension in-house to make sure that AI products are sitting within HubSpot, And I think this is really smart, because, and actually, for instance, they generate follow-up emails, and the sale can edit the follow-up email, can change the prompt, etc. And actually own. And the way that I think it's Elric who told me that, or maybe Ramp. I think the smartest thing I've seen is like everything about AI is how do you manage distributed versus centralized power. And it's the same as when I talk about squads and I say I want to give ownership to people. There is no world in which like sales will just use a product, AI product, that is built by someone who doesn't know their business, and they will just use it like that. No, you need to leave them adapt AI, potentially change the prompt, train the prompt themselves. So you need to find a good balance between what's centralized, but what's built by GTM engineers and RevOps, and what's decentralized, what's fine-tuned by the sales themselves, And I think the companies will really find productivity gains from AI are the one who find the right balance, where you need some people to build the products, to conceive them, and you need some people to use them, but people who use them are not just consuming the AI. They are part of the answer. They are part of how you build it. And so you leave them some ability to edit the prompting, edit the logics, to make sure that they really feel like it's their thing too.
Are there any AI tools or platforms you're bullish on, or you're looking at, or maybe testing? at the moment, or looking into the new
Yeah,
year?
yeah. I mean, like, of course, but I mean, like, I would not say anything magical, but like, personally, I use a lot Lovable. I actually did a LinkedIn post about it because I do mockups,
Hmm.
and for me, like in the
Yeah.
past, I was doing like long Notion documents with specs, and now, for instance, when I want to revamp the pricing page of Lemlist, I just reproduce the pricing page and I write with Lovable, and I work with Lovable, and I do my iteration, and instead of saying everything that I want to change, I show
Show them.
the new
Yeah.
pricing. So it's not really, it has one problem. So it's amazing. Like I save like maybe few days of work, but the problem is that I'm solution oriented and not problem oriented. And so for the team, it's not a good example to have a CEO who is like showing the solution and not working about the problems. And so that's the biggest flaw I see, but it's very, very powerful to me. That can be Lovable, Replit, Cursor, whatever, any platform, they work pretty much the same.
Yeah.
It's just that if you can change a long text into a prototype, that really helps to expedite things and to work faster. Then we use a lot of, I'm really bullish on N10, to be honest. I think it's an amazing platform. I think it's very technical, but I don't use it, but we have many people in the team using it. And I think anything that's workflow builder, I think there will be an era where you have two worlds. You have the applicative world and you have the system world. And I think like N10 is really feeding the system world, and meaning that many companies can build their own system.
Mhm.
And it's a bit like an open source thing where you can build
Yeah.
your own tools. And I don't believe it will destroy software. I think that you will still need like tools that are very well packaged, very smart in terms of interface, etc. So, but I think there will be two different worlds for different use cases. So I do think like the workflow builders is a really strong category in the future.
Yeah, that's interesting. We're definitely seeing a lot of traction with N810, a lot of different use cases. Same as Zapier back in the day, but it allows you to build even like entire products in the back end of different products
Yeah.
on N810, which is just crazy to think this can be done on a self-serve kind of model.
There was like I don't know what was the name, but there was a very famous project at some time. It was like a front end that you can drag and drop components and then connect them to BigQuery or any type of database, and you can build your own product. I don't know what was the name, but it's a bit like me, but in terms of workflow, it's a bit like that. I do believe that more and more companies will build their own products for niche use case.
Yeah.
And this is why at Lemlist we invest a lot in the API. You can basically almost build Lemlist 100% without Lemlist, like without showing Lemlist. You could buy a front end, you could buy everything and almost do 100% of what Lemlist does without showing its Lemlist, And some people actually do. We have some partners who are like building lots of things that are visible to their customer, and they don't even display Lemlist, because I think the future is really about enabling our customer to build products if they need to. And we have actually, you can use Lemlist 3 different ways. You can use Lemlist as a product that we try to be very simple to use and packaged. You can use Lemlist within your CRM if you don't want to leave the CRM, or you can use Lemlist as a product directly in HubSpot, in Salesforce, like without leaving it. And you can use Lemlist as an API, building your own product. And I think it's the way any software should be conceived now. It's to be used in other systems like Troy ours, in this product itself with a good experience, and via API if you want to build your own use case.
Allowing you to tap into multiple kind of business models and use cases.
Exactly.
That's quite interesting. And you're now obviously in the journey to scale from 30 million to hopefully 100, 150. What are some of the changes that you're seeing like in the next kind of era that you're going to need to take on things that you foresee you have to kind of learn yourself personally, professionally, habits, systems that you think should be in place for that to happen?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think, to be honest, that we are on track to reach 100 million with like the way we operate and the market we operate in. I think the market is huge, and the way we are positioning Lemlist to be like the sales engagement tool, the operating system for sales. We want to be the operating system for sales from like 1 rep to 20, 50 reps. Like every designer is opening Figma on the morning. I want them to open Lemlist on the morning, and I think if we achieve that, if we achieve to be like as useful and simple as Figma is for designer, but for sales, I think we can be pretty much the same company and reach 100 million AR. I don't think we need to drastically change nothing. It's just being better everywhere. So improving the UX, improving some features, like being better everywhere. But I don't think we need to change profoundly something. The thing that we are changing in the product is really the intent-based workflow. We want sales to come every morning and to have like suggestions of leads that are the next best action to do, which for me is like a bit the ultimate target for a prospection tool, like an outbound tool. It's like you want to help people. For me, the perfect tool would be like even a Tinder, where you have the leads and you're like, okay, this is why I think it's your best lead today. These are the intents, internal intent, external intent. Do you want to engage or not? Yes, I want to engage. On which channel? We recommend LinkedIn because this person replies better on LinkedIn. Okay, I'm going to reach out in LinkedIn. So this guy, you should send a follow-up in 6 days. Can we plan a follow-up? Do you want to edit the messaging? So really an assistant for sales. So for me, if we do this in terms of products, we can already reach 100 million, more than 100 million. And then in terms of how we operate, to be honest, like, same. I don't think there needs to be big change. I think we just need to be better and continue to iterate on. I don't think, I don't see any profound change. I think it's just continue what we're doing. So for instance, we have a new partnership manager. She's doing great. So it's part of like improving the talent density. You told me yesterday, Julia, if you're here, you're doing a great job. We are in the process of hiring potentially someone for affiliation who has a big experience in affiliate management. So it's just part of the process, to improve every part of the company. And so for me, is to make sure that the bar remains high and never like, accept less. And as long as I'm aware of what's going on and I'm always like challenging everyone in a positive way, I think we are going to reach that. So I don't see any like major change, but of course I need to continue to improve myself, and talking here helps me, to realize some stuff I could do better. So as long as everyone gets better every day, 1% per day or 0.5% per day, it's already. I think we'll get there.
That's really good to hear. And on a closing, maybe final note, a lot of companies obviously use Lemlist as their sales enablement platform, the platform that allows them to go to market in all the different ways that you have available, from LinkedIn all the way to email, now WhatsApp, and all the channels. What are your top predictions, or where are you seeing the market going in terms of go to market in the next year?
It's a good question. I still believe the same. I still believe that for me, in the past like years, the teams have like there was a huge emphasis for volume, because we have at different era in GTM or even outbound world. I think initially people discovered it was like the golden era, like it was like crazy because you could have like 5% positive reply rate, and it was a very, very successful channel when you were doing it right. And then it becomes like more mature. More people do it. Some people send 1 million, 2 million email in a month, and so people try to find different ways to differentiate. So that can be through more personalization with like custom image, like with voice notes that we allow to do on LinkedIn, and that actually works. So there are two different streams. That there is the one we follow, which is how do we do more quality. And that was the case with personalized image. Now LinkedIn voice note, WhatsApp message. So how do you do more differentiators? And there is another path which is followed by other people. Sometimes it's more volume. And the question is like whether or not the more volume will continue to work, and to what extent. And my belief is that it's impossible that it continues to work. It's impossible. If it doesn't die in 1 year, it will die in 2 years, in 3 years.
We're definitely seeing signs that volume is becoming more expensive, easier to trim. The platforms are hammering at it using AI.
It's exactly, for instance, models. I can give you a simple example, but models are more and more powerful and less expensive. So tomorrow you could have models that sit in Google Chrome, because today it's very expensive for Google to have an AI model that runs on every single email to decide if it's spam or not. So they don't. I don't think they have an AI model that runs to that, because it would be too expensive. And Gmail is a free product. So, but tomorrow you could have a model that is in Chrome, that is run in your browser, and that is doing as well as ChatGPT 5, but in your browser, and so now tomorrow, like unsolicited email is like 100% filtered, like so you cannot do. I think the volume game is just it's going to end up. It's going to end up somewhere. But if you think of like outbound, I don't think it will die, just because, to be honest, like it happens very often to me that someone comes to me with an offer that is good, and same for my CTO, or sometimes there is someone who targets precisely what I need that solves something that is a real pain for me with a message that's really good, that resonates, and that solves my pain, that explains me something. That I don't know, that can be a PSP vendor that tells me that I'm working with Stripe and I could save money with that if I were doing that. I have hundreds of examples. And the problem is not prospection itself. It's not outbound, because outbound is really, it's a cheap channel. It's efficient. And when it's done right, it's really adds value to the buyer. Because the buyer doesn't know that they have a problem sometimes, or they don't know that they can solve a problem. And so when they don't know that they have a problem, or when they don't know that they can solve a problem, then outbound is really good, because it helps you to identify your problem and act on it. But I think the problem is the way it's done. It's sell like when you talk to me to sell me something that has nothing to do with my job, or that is, I don't know, like sometimes it's crazy. Like there are people like asking me to sell wine. I don't know, like it's like, what the fuck, and so this is a problem in outbound. This is people who are lazy and who just hide laziness behind volume, and so I think the trend is like more quality oriented prospection. It will happen one way or another. And we want to be the platform that allows you to be quality first. And this is why everything we're shipping in Lemlist is now towards how you can personalize more, but not only personalize at scale, but personalize one by one, personalize one message, or personalize the channel for one lead, etc. So it's really the way we think the market will evolve. And we hope that we're right about that.
And you have a good challenge, becoming the go-to place where salespeople open or go to every single day, instead of HubSpot or Salesforce or the CRM. Yeah, best of luck. It's genuinely been a super interesting conversation.
Thanks so much.
Hope people could get a few things maybe out of it. Really appreciate your time and being with us here today.
Thanks so much for having me, Bill.
Thank you, man.
All the best.
It's been a pleasure.